What is up, everybody? Welcome back. I hope you're all having a great day. I'm here with yet another college football interview. Thank you so much, Matt, from the Orlando Sentinel, for coming on today. I hope you're all having a good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself before we get into our topic today?
Yeah, I'm Matt Murschel from the Orlando Sentinel. I cover college football, specifically geared towards UCF football with their transition to the Big 12 this year, and it's been a fun time, and we're looking forward for obviously year two in the conference.
Yeah. Yeah, as we enter the college football offseason, it's obviously kind of been our niche here on the channel. And today we're going to talk about some UCF offseason outlook because this is a big offseason for them and a big season coming next year with the new 12-team playoff and a lot of more implications surrounding the program. We've been going through kind of some other schools in the state. We did Florida State about a month ago, and there's others in the works. But super thankful to have you on today, Matt. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. UCF is honestly, in my opinion, one of the most intriguing programs in the nation right now. Just considering first year in a power, I guess now we're Power Four conference, first year in the books. Just such a large student base and an increasingly growing alumni base, and in a big city, Orlando. It makes it really one of the more interesting programs. Because last year coming into it, I had mixed emotions on what UCF was going to be. I really liked John Rice Plumlee. I thought he was like an intriguing mobile quarterback. Gus Malzone, obviously, a national champion as a coach, a kind of a big name to bring into the program. Just a lot of things coming together in a sort of weaker Big 12, really from where it was a year ago. I thought they could do some things. They outperformed my expectations personally. Did they outperform yours coming into the season?
Um, I don't know if I would say outperformed. I mean, I had them at 7-5 going into
Yeah,
last
I
season.
had them at 5-7, so just the flip
Yeah,
of what you had, and they
yeah.
obviously sandwiched in the middle at 6-6.
Yeah, and I thought it was going to be a transition year for sure. I mean, I knew that going on the road, they had a brutal road schedule last year. They traveled more than 17,000 miles. Part of that was a non-conference game to Boise State,
Yeah,
which they had never been to, and but still, the idea of having to go on the road. They went to Kansas twice. They had to go to Lubbock, which is for Texas Tech. That was a long road trip. I felt like getting used to that road environment, and also, this is a big step up with physicality
mm,
wise. I mean, from the
yeah,
American
exactly.
to the Big 12, and I felt like as much as the UCF had done a good job of recruiting and developing players and getting transfers, I felt like really they had to have some guys that really, that needed to kind of maybe be of that Power Five kind of mentality and go from there. And I think that was something that they were trying to work on a little bit. And I think you saw where at times they were able to do it, and at times they
Mm,
weren't. I mean, I look at the Kansas game, which I was at on the road. That game right from the start, Kansas was a bigger, stronger, faster team, and they saw a lot of that. UCF saw a lot of that this season against in the Big 12. So that's been the focus this offseason. You can understand that why Gus made some offseason changes and why they were looking to move some coaches around and bring in a new strength and conditioning staff because they feel like they have to find a way to get comparable if they're going to continue on in the Big 12.
right, and that's the biggest jump when you go from non-power 5 or 4, whatever you want to call it, into the power conferences. It's a trench battle, right? Every
Mhm.
college football team, all these good teams are built from the trenches and the quarterback, and you build outwards from there. So yeah, that was always going to be a big jump. But just as they went 6-6, watching these games, I feel like they could have easily been almost 8-4. Really, you had the
Mhm.
Oklahoma game within grasp. Baylor, they were up big on Baylor and came back, and I'll never forget that Timmy McLean, the scramble on making like a 40-yard pass, and the announcer, who's the announcer for the Charlotte Hornets, also I forget Eric something, I forget his name, but just what a call by him
Mhm.
during the game. That was quite the game to watch. But they could have easily been 8-4, even with all the struggles of, like you said, going on the road and adjusting to the strength and physicality of a power conference. Um, Going into the offseason, right? Obviously hitting the portal, getting the recruiting up, you can already tell the difference that they're in a power conference now. The recruiting immediately jumps. According to 24/7 Sports, 247 Sports, they were at 50th last year in recruiting
Mhm.
for the 2023 class, all the way up to 33rd on their site. It was an average ranking of 33 across the three major platforms, but that was the highest, was 33 on 24/7. You can just see the gap, right? And for you, have you noticed that? Was there um is there a specific impact that you've noticed from just changing conferences to the recruiting trail?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, for sure. I mean, and that's something that Gus talked about when he got to UCF. When in 2021 was, they were going to recruit like their hair was on fire. And they've done that from the very beginning. And I think as soon as they knew as soon as they accepted the bid to go into the Big 12, they were using that, on the recruiting show. They were going into kids' homes and saying, listen, you're going to be playing in the Big 12 now. You're going to be on national TV every week, every game. You're going to be featured a lot more than you probably would have been in the American. You got opportunities that you probably won't get. There's no more just, okay, do you want to go to the SEC or the ACC? I mean, the Big 12 offered a lot. I think Gus and his staff did a good job on that early on. Now, you saw a little bit of that in that 2023 class, and then you saw more of it, obviously, in the 2024 class, where they were able to get that what I think it was 8 4-star players.
It
A lot of
changes
those
based
guys
on
were local.
platform, but yeah.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, it really did change their momentum, and I think too, even despite the fact that they had kind of just their first losing season since 2015, I think that that had nothing to do with recruiting for them. I think that, the recruits saw what was going on. They saw the fact that the school is spending money to upgrade its budget. It's trying to upgrade, obviously, its facilities. And it's an appeal. I mean, listen, if I'm a high school player and I get the opportunity to go play against Colorado and Deion Sanders, which is coming up this week,
And they
this
get him
year
at home, which
at
is
home. Yeah,
awesome.
exactly.
I'm going there no matter what.
So I mean, you get an opportunity to do that. You're excited about that. That's then the next week to go on the road to Florida and play in the swamp with the Gators. I mean, those
I'll
are
be there
things.
too. Those are the
Yeah,
two I'm making
exactly.
sure to go to.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and those are the type of things that even though the Florida game's not a Big 12 game, those are
Mhm.
things that they can kind of pitch to their recruits. And it's just building momentum. And I think, they've got to continue to do that. I mean, listen, I think if they can sign another top 40 class, this next one coming in, as long as it's in the top, 2 or 3 of the Big 12, I think they're going to add some more talent there. They've done a great job of keeping a lot of the recruits from the state of Florida here.
Yeah,
They've recruited really well in Atlanta, which is something that they haven't
that's
done in a
hard to do.
while. Yeah, and that's hard to do because you're competing against a lot of schools in that area. So they've done well in Atlanta. They're going to go into, I think, Louisiana, Texas a little bit more. But I think you're going to see all that kind of pay off, and it has so far, and it's paid off in the transfer portal as well because they're getting some
Oh yeah.
kids who maybe weren't necessarily going to go to a UCF, but now all of a sudden feel like, hey, this is an opportunity. A guy like a KJ Jefferson who can come in now and finish out his career under Gus Malzahn and maybe feel like he can maybe have that next step.
Yeah, you can really tell the difference, especially in the transfer portal where, and we'll talk about it more in a little bit, but they were pretty good last year. I mean, they were in the top 25. They were 24th according to On3, 5th in the Big 12, and then they move up this year. They take the jump to 17th. Them and Texas Tech just battle all the way, whether it's recruiting, whether it's transfer portal. Those are the top 2 names I've seen at the top of the Big 12. But yeah, it's kind of impressive to me, really, how quick UCF's jumped to the top of the Big 12 specifically. In their recruiting efforts, because I feel like there's a lot of potential in a program like this to recruit, especially
Yeah,
with guys like that.
oh, there's very much a lot of potential. I
Yeah,
mean, and I think that's something. Plus, you got Gus Malzahn. I mean, Gus Malzahn
yeah,
has, like you
that's a
mentioned
proven
before,
coach.
he's a
Yeah,
proven coach, and I think I thought that their transfer class last year was good,
hmm
not great. I felt like and especially after the season, when you go and look back, they had a lot of guys that they brought in that didn't maybe necessarily pan out like they thought. And Gus has mentioned this before that they've missed on a couple guys that they felt
yeah,
were going to have maybe a bigger impact. And I think that's where you saw some of the hurt that they had, when it came to depth, because they didn't have some of the guys that they felt like were going to be able to step up. I think this last time out, this upcoming, transfer class that they've got right now, I think this is outstanding because again, they fill a lot of needs. They needed to rebuild the linebacker position. They were able to do that so far. They found a quarterback. They've added some
yeah.
talent,
They got
and
one of the quarterbacks in the
yep,
portal. I mean, KJ Jefferson. I know they rank him based on eligibility and age and stuff like that, but if you're looking at a talent perspective, he's easily top 3, 4, maybe
mm-hmm.
depending on how you look at him in the class. I would say he's top 3 or 4 in this quarterback class.
Yeah,
So
he
that
was.
was a really big get for them. I was surprised, but I was happy because that's a big get for Gus Malzahn, considering the history with Cam Newton and the player comps between KJ and him. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that was huge for them, and I also think and then they added, they wanted to build up that defense, and that's what they were able to do, through the transfer market. They got 15 transfers. They feel like really are going to help them make a move,
and
and
it
they
is
can add
defense
some more,
heavy.
and they can add some more at the end of spring. I mean, the
Yeah,
second transfer window opens up in May, and so they can add some more if they really feel a need to it. But they really like what they do, and then they made some off-season coaching moves. They brought in a new defensive coordinator. They brought in a new offensive coordinator. They brought in strength and conditioning coach. So Gus is serious about this. He's serious about, like, listen, we've got to find a way to get better. 6 and 7 is not going to work. We got to win more. And so he's made the commitment, and they're going to see if that pays off.
Yeah, like you said, 17 transfers coming in. And when you take a look at it, it's a lot of safeties, linebackers, edge rushers, just building out the defense with quality role players who are going to contribute and getting offensive players to come in with, offensive line players with the guys they already have. It's an impressive class, and I think it's adding, a lot of depth that, like you said, they're just hoping it pans out to kind of fill out the rest of the roster. In terms of the high school recruiting, are there any specific recruits that you look at as these guys can be impact players instantly? They can come in first year and maybe make a difference. You see a lot of receivers, so I'm wondering if that was maybe the receiver focus was to get
Mhm.
guys to act as weapons for whoever quarterback we bring in, not only this year with KJ, but for the future going forward.
Yeah, I think they've got guys that they really feel like they could step up and help them out. And Kylan Fox is a guy that was listed as tight end, but really can play wide receiver. He's a big body guy. I've had a lot of guys tell me that they feel like he could step in right away and contribute. They brought in Jalen Hayward, who was a talented cornerback from Georgia. I mean, they feel like he's going to be able to maybe get an opportunity to see the field. Frankie Arthur, Stacy Gage are both running backs that UCF, really went after hard. These are guys that they feel like can really kind of help build up that running backs group. I mean, they know RJ Harvey's going to be the guy, but you need
Yeah,
some
and
younger.
he is a dog. He is really
Yes,
good.
yeah, he's really good. So they just needed some young guys around him to kind of maybe spell him. And then, as you mentioned, they added like more receivers. I mean, I think Bernell Richardson's going to be good. He's an opportunity to start right away. And then they added some offensive linemen they felt like really could help out. So I'd say there's maybe 3 or 4 guys right now that are going to kind of have the opportunity to step up right away. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge, though. I mean, listen, they haven't begun spring ball. They've been doing off-season conditioning right now. Spoke to some of the guys like Kobe Hudson and Ricky Barber, and they really haven't had a chance to see these guys on the field outside of running sprints and things like that.
Yeah.
So if the players, the early enrollees, can get in and get ingratiate into the system and get into the conditioning thing, they'll get bigger, stronger, better. So they'll have a better opportunity maybe to play earlier on rather than the mid-year guys, which they have a few that are going to come in who are going to have to get adjusted really quickly.
Yeah, and like we said before, it is impressive really how they came in and in their second year in the Big 12 are ranked the number 2 class behind Texas Tech, who
Mhm.
I think if you look at the overall depth of the classes, UCF certainly competes. I think obviously Texas Tech just gets the nudge because they brought in 5-star Micah Hudson, but they were really neck and neck, and I don't think Texas Tech, all due respect, is bringing in a 5-star every cycle. So I think
Mhm.
UCF is going to get every opportunity to compete to be the top recruiter in the Big 12.
Oh, for sure. And I think, what's interesting to me is both these coaches, Joey McGuire at Texas Tech and Gus Malzahn, these are high school guys.
Yeah,
They have a lot of respect. They cut their teeth in the high school ranks. So, for them to go out there and recruit hard, I think Joey really went out of Texas really hard and tried to recruit. Went into the back roads to get some guys that they really thought they could get. And Texas Tech is another school. It's got they're rebuilding this football stadium. They're adding to the facilities. All Big 12 facilities pretty much are outstanding. So they feel like, hey, we've got a couple guys in there. They'll come out and pay off big dividends. And Texas Tech as a school, I'm maybe not so much like UCF, but they're probably
right.
not going to hit the transfer portal nearly as hard. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? And whereas UCF needs to hit the portal, I mean, they need to continue to build depth and bring in those experienced guys. And Gus has done a great job of kind of finding that balance of, okay, we're going to still recruit really hard and get these young talent, but we also need to make sure that we get some transfer pieces that can fill in some gaps and kind of transition or bridge, from the young guys to the older guys. And I think that's what he's done a really good job of doing.
first year. I mean, there's got to be something to. John Rice Plumlee leaves for the draft. I did see some of him at the Senior Bowl. What was the recruitment process like to get a guy like KJ Jefferson? Because I'm sure there was other suitors. Miami was in contact with every QB and their mama. Um, just what was that recruitment process like to get KJ on campus?
Well, for UCF, you got to remember that KJ wasn't in the portal early on. He
Right,
hadn't really
he came in
decided to
late.
jump in. He came in late. So really, UCF had kind of turned their attention to some earlier players who they thought maybe could fit their need. Grayson McCall was a guy from Coastal
Yeah, I did see
Carolina.
that one, but he chose
Yeah,
NC State.
yeah, he was on campus for a while. I was at a basketball game where he was at with Gus, and did that. So when Grayson decided to go to NC State, they kind of were that they get the right guy, and so they were kind of waiting, and all of a sudden, then KJ says, "Okay, I'm going to the portal," and then Gus, I think, attacked it pretty hard from the start. I think he was right on the phone with them. They're trying to get him on campus, talk with them after the bowl loss, kind of get caught up on some of the things they're going to do. I think KJ likes what Gus loves the offensive system that Gus wants to run.
Yeah, it's a run
And
heavy one.
yeah, it's a run heavy offense, and obviously they use the RPO well, and they use the quarterback very much so. And I think the selling point too is that Gus can say, "Look what I did with Cam Newton." I mean, look what we did with
That
Cam
was the
Newton.
talking point from the beginning, was the
Yeah,
connection between those two.
very much so. And so they feel like, okay, plus the fact I think what's appealing for KJ is he looks at his roster and says, okay, I got 1,000 yard, a 1,400 yard running back coming back. I've got close to 1,000 yard receiver coming back in Kobe Hudson. I've
Mhm.
got 3 to 4 offensive linemen who've got starting experience, so he doesn't have to
Plus
work
one's in the
behind
portal and recruits
yeah,
and everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have to go behind a really bad line. Got plenty of weapons around him on their offense, so he feels like this is an excellent opportunity. He doesn't come in here and have to will this team to win. I mean, they understand what they need to do, so I think he can kind of fit in very well what needs to happen. And he's got lots of people around him, that support system that will be able to help him out. And like we talked about earlier with the schedule, I mean, he's going to be featured heavily on a lot. Believe me, on a lot of these games. That Colorado game, if he starts out strong, he's going to be big on that. The Florida game, I mean, there are opportunities for him to make
These are
statements.
big name quarterbacks that you're playing against. Shedeur
Yeah,
Sanders, Graham
yeah,
Mertz, guys like Cam Rising in Utah and all that, Noah Fafita in Arizona. So he'll get
yeah.
his chances.
Yeah, and so I think that was very appealing. Now, he's coming from the SEC, so I don't
Mhm.
think there's a concern about pressure or what's going to. I mean, I think, to be honest with you, understood exactly what was going on in the
Yeah.
SEC, and so the move I think will be pretty smooth and smooth transition. I know, talking to Kobe Hudson the other day, he said they've been meeting basically daily to kind of get caught up and work out and stuff like that, and so everyone's focused on it. Most of these guys who come in as fifth-year transfers or
Mhm.
grad transfers, these are all business decisions. They're coming to this school because they want an opportunity to win and to try to get to the next level. They're not there to mess around. So I think that was the selling point for Gus, and it happened really quickly. I mean, I know, talking to Gus after the Gasparilla Bowl, he wanted to focus on getting a quarterback quickly, and that was kind of the rule.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at KJ, of course, 2023 obviously wasn't his greatest year ever, but to put so much focus on that is missing the special talent that he's displayed in 2022 and 2021, which in my opinion is what I think UCF's going to be getting in him as a player. I don't think 2023 was the, what he really is kind of year, showing what he is. 5,324 yards passing, 45 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, those 2 years combined. Those are incredible numbers. 1,000 and then the 1,300 yards of rushing to go along with 15 touchdowns. Like, the guy's a dual threat QB. He's special. He was giving Alabama everything they wanted 2 years ago when they matched up. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I like him. I think he's going to fit great in the system. But of course, with a guy like that in this transfer portal environment, NIL is going to come into play, as it does seemingly everywhere these days. What has been UCF's approach to the NIL market? Like, how have they dealt with NIL in this current landscape?
Well, obviously they're behind a lot of people. And we look at the Big 12. There are a lot of blue blood brands right now who have lots of big donors. Big program donors. And so for UCF, the Kingdom is their collective, NIL collective. They've worked very hard to try to do their part to get as many deals in place for some of their players. Not only just retaining guys, but making sure also, like you said, they get guys like KJ Jefferson. So, and with the NIL and everything, you have to look at the idea that, you only have a certain amount of pot of money. So you have to figure out how that money is going to be divided up. So they've done a relatively good job. They continue to push to try to get more, get more support. Gus Malzahn has been very supportive of the collective. He's worn Kingdom gear, polos and hats and stuff like that. And from press conferences, he's talked about it several times in his press conferences about how important NIL is for the school. The school's really done a good job, I think, of accepting and embracing it. Obviously, there's legal limitations. They can't necessarily facilitate these deals, but they feel like there's more than enough opportunity for them to get those kind of the players they need. Now, are they going to get like a 5-star here and there? It's going to be harder for them because, again, like I said, they just don't have the fan base is young. The
Yeah,
alumni
exactly.
base is young. I think the figure is their average alumni base is 35 years old. So, you look at some of these schools like Texas, Texas Tech. They've got donors
Much
who are in their
older,
60s,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and established. And so they'll get there eventually. It's just going to take some time. So they still feel like it's an uphill battle. And as long as they're able to kind of to get the support that they need, they feel like they can get the kind of players they need to win.
And of course, the key is improvement, right? You just want to
Mm-hmm.
see year over year growth, and that's what they've shown, right? They haven't shown a fluke year. They haven't shown they're falling off. They're showing that each year they're competing they're rising. And I mean, I think just having a student base that big, eventually something's got to click. Eventually, enough people are going to get into the system where the NIL can keep growing. And I mean, schools are finding a way. I think UCF, they're just, with that city, there has to be some potential there for a lot of growth as the years continue to go on with such a big student base. Um, is there anything else, like in terms of NIL, just how much of an impact, like based on where they were before, has it grown? Has the presence grown in just the 2 years they've been in the Big 12?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think NIL has grown. I've spoken to SJ Tui, who's their kind of executive director, of the Kingdom, the collective. Like I spoke to him a couple months ago. He talked about they're seeing growth. Obviously,
Yeah,
there's support there. They've done a good job of getting out there. But I think people tend to forget it's not just football.
right.
NIL has
It's
to
all
be
sports.
for all the sports. So they have to work hard on basketball. Basketball's been really hard for them because again, this is a football state, and you look at basketball. The Big 12 is the top basketball conference in the country. It's been that way for
Yeah,
three
it
or
has
four
been for the
years
past
now.
few years now, right?
Yeah, and so they've got to go out and get, to try to work on that, to try to get enough funding to try to maybe get some deals for players at the basketball level. Not just men's but women's as well.
Right.
You've obviously got the baseball, you've got softball, you've got things like that where you're going to have to work on that. So they've seen growth and they feel like they're doing a good job. Um, they just need to continue to do that. That's what they keep telling me. And it's hard because UCF's in the process of trying to build this football campus that Terry
Mhm.
Mahajer has proposed. Athletic director Terry Mahajer has proposed, and it's a big project. And part of that project includes a new $90 million they received from the Orange County Commissioners to build a new tower on the stadium. Which is going to be top of the line, and it's going to feature plenty of premium seating and things like that. So you're not only just getting NIL, you have to also try to raise money for facilities and for your budget, and
It's a
and
lot.
that's yeah. And Terry told me a month ago that it's going to be razor thin for a couple of years. They're not going to have much money to free money to spend around. I mean, it's going to be a lot of just trying to get themselves caught back up again. Once they start getting the full share of Big 12 money, that'll help them out a lot. So I think it's all just when you're a young program and in a young conference like the Big 12, I guess not a young conference, but a conference,
But just
that
a,
you're
a
young.
new conference. It's just
Yeah, new
such a change
conference.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just going to take time to kind of get everyone up to speed and figure out what's going on. But there's been plenty of enthusiasm in this fan base, and I think that's really helped them out as well.
I think fans have every right to be enthusiastic. If these are your tough, razor thin developmental years, and this is how it's going, where you're constantly improving and not even perform, like you're performing at certainly
Mm-hmm.
an average level on the field, right? Like there's every reason to be optimistic. So, I mean, if I'm a fan and I do keep, I pay close attention to the program, and I have so many friends that go there, like I would feel optimistic about it. I've seen nothing but growth. Now I'm seeing big name quarterbacks, and a coach that's showing he has the ability to get name brand talent in the door. I don't know why you wouldn't be optimistic as a UCF fan. I think the program's heading in the right direction.
Yeah, very much so. And I think, again, with optimism though comes, you got to make sure you
Right.
perform. And that's been the thing that Gus has talked about. And
Expectations.
and the expectations, believe me, yeah. And some fans are fine and realize it's going to be a process. And there's some fans that are, they want to see, a Big 12 championship next year. I mean, and believe me, I think the players will not see that. I think coaches
Right.
want to see that. But it's gonna be a challenge still. And I mean, I warn people even going into next year that yes, I think you'll see improvement. But do I think they'll win a Big 12 championship? No, but I think they could be in the top half of the Big 12 next year when it's all said and done. I mean, they have the possibility to start out the season 5-1.
Yeah, I was just
And
like thinking about
yeah,
that.
and then then all of a sudden you're right there, and you can do some good things. They just have to get stronger and get better, and build some more depth. And I think that they're right on that track.
And all those things take a couple years, right? You need a couple
Mm-hmm.
recruiting classes to come in and fully develop and to improve the staff with the player development people that you want there. But those things come in time. They take a couple years. You got to get those young guys that you're really passionate about. But in terms of looking forward to next year, I do want to kind of discuss the schedule. I can pull it up here so that everybody can see it. UCF is just one of those sleeper teams for me next season. And my friends and I talk. We did a little prediction video here on the channel about what the 12-team playoff could look like. And as the year goes on before the season, we'll talk more about conferences specifically. Like you said, you think they could start out 4-1. I wholeheartedly agree. I think the Colorado game. Let's not put too much value in Deion Sanders and the name brand that Colorado brings. This was not a good football team last year, and the model of bringing in a whole new line from the transfer portal and just putting them out there, it hasn't really worked that much. So I think that's a really winnable game at home. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know your opinion on Billy Napier and what he's been like with that Florida program. In my heart, I truly believe that is a very winnable game at Florida. UCF against Florida. I think they could very well start off really
Mhm.
6-0 after that Cincinnati game. I mean, what is your kind of outlook for the season, just schedule wise? Where do you think it goes really in this first half of the year that I have on screen?
Yeah, I think for them, really, it comes down to, like I said, they're going to start out strong. I think their non-conference schedule is it's easy to be handleable. And again, you asked me about. I think Florida obviously is their biggest
Yeah,
non-conference challenge. And to me, the challenge comes that you're on the road. You're in the
right.
swamp.
You're in the
You know,
swamp.
you're in the swamp. You're gonna have to face a Florida team that desperately wants to get better. Didn't qualify for a bowl game this year. Billy Napier's on the hot seat. Those are things you just you don't want to have to face sometimes when you're facing teams, because you never know you're gonna get out of them. But I still feel like there's an opportunity they win that game. You know what I mean? Because based on the talent level, and you're right. I mean, then you look at Cincinnati. I mean, they could easily be 6-0 going in there. It depends on, maybe, I guess, the TCU game. On the road to TCU.
That'll
I
be
think, to me,
interesting, but yeah,
yeah.
TCU's
I
coming
mean,
off a really rough year where they're still
yeah.
turning over their entire roster after that national title appearance.
Yeah, and I mean that's going to be the challenge for them, and to me, for UCF, it's about road win and how they play on
Yeah,
the road. I mean, because that last year's where they had their struggles was on the road. So I think, again, like you said, there could be 6-0. Iowa State's going to be a tough game for
that's a real
them.
tough one. I do have them
You
losing
know,
that game.
yeah, and then BYU has, as much as they didn't play well last year. Again, they didn't get a bowl game. BYU is going to be tough. I think Arizona is going to be interesting
That's a
coming
hard
into
one, right?
town.
The games like
Yeah,
those, Arizona,
yeah.
Utah, I expect those losses. That I have no issue if you. Although Arizona, new coach, let's see how they look
Yeah, and
without
that's a
Jed Fish.
space
But
game, and
right,
UCF's undefeated in the space game. If you
so
want to
I
throw that
mean,
in there, so
upset alert, right? Like
yes,
I won't
putting it on there.
overjump it, but
But then, like I said, Arizona State on the road is tricky a little bit, even though because
depending
Arizona
on who their
State's a bit of.
quarterback is, yeah,
Yeah, and then West Virginia, and I mean, I know West Virginia,
yes, I
was
can.
bad, but still, you got to go on the road to Morgantown. That's not an easy direct flight. You have to go somewhere and be bussed in. That could be a challenge, or they charter in and fly in. You know what I mean? But and then Utah's
Yeah,
won the
and that's a
Pac-12.
tough one. Again, no, I have
Yeah,
no issue if they go in there and lose that one. I'm
yeah.
expecting it personally. Utah is probably a playoff team, all things considered. As far as just personal prediction, I know we're super far out and it's going to change. What is your personal record prediction, just regular season right now?
Well, I mean, there's no reason why they couldn't go 8-4, 9-3. I mean,
Yeah,
legitimately, if they stay healthy and everyone's doing it, I think you have a chance. I think the 9-3 mark is not by any
I
stretch
don't
of the
think it's
imagination.
ridiculous at all.
It's ridiculous at all. Like I said, I still think they're going to finish in the top half of the Big 12 this next year. I think they have the
Yeah,
talent enough to do it, and I think there's been a little change in some of these teams and teams you brought in. To me, it's going to come down to, I could see them being right on the cusp of playing for maybe the Big 12 title, or in the race for the Big 12 title that last month. And then it's really going to
yeah,
come down to where can what games can you find a way to win, and maybe try to avoid an upset. It would be great going in that Utah game if they were in the mix there, and then that's a tough game, but still there'd be a lot of buzz on that game. I still think there could be a lot of buzz for all these games, but
yeah. Oh,
so
100%.
that's where I've kind of got them at this point early on. Now that can change again depending on what happens, if they add some more players, or anything like that.
And,
But
and getting both Utah and Arizona at home is a huge
Mhm.
win.
Oh, for sure, and that's kind of what they worked on doing when they got, is making sure their schedule kind of fit them. This is a very, now I won't say easy schedule. This is a very likable schedule for
Right.
UCF,
It's
considering what
doable. You
last
can
year
work
was
with a
like.
schedule like
Yeah,
this.
last year was very difficult for them, and I mean, you saw it, and I think this year they do have opportunities to feel like they can make a big run. So if everyone stays healthy, I think obviously a good start for them would be perfect, and then they can kind of roll into that second bye week, and see where they're at, and maybe then they're in the mix for something.
Yeah, I mean, my personal prediction, I kind of put it on the higher end. I said 8-4.
Mhm.
It's not locked in. I want to see, like you said, what they do after the spring game and during the spring game, stuff like that. I think personally 8-4. I feel like a floor is 6-6, 7-5. But my ceiling, I kind of shot high. I said it was 10-2 as a ceiling. I really feel
Mhm.
like if they're in every game. I don't think there's a game that they're just supposed to lose outside of Utah and maybe Arizona. I feel like they could win all of these. I really think Florida is a winnable game.
Mhm.
But for me, the key, because remember, it's auto bids, right? It's auto bids if you win your conference to the playoffs. I really feel like if you lose the Florida game, obviously it doesn't affect your conference standings. If they split Arizona and Utah, I really feel like they can be in that Big 12 title game if they just win one of
Mhm.
those two.
Yeah, and I also think let's not forget it's a 12-team playoff, so
Yeah, exactly.
they have an opportunity if they're in the ranked in the top 12, depending where they're at. They could be in an at-large bid that gets into the playoff mix. Now, they would love that, and believe me, because if they gave them an opportunity, especially if they're high enough, they can host some. A game would be perfect. But
If they win the conference, yeah, they'd get a
yeah,
not
if
only
they
a
win the
bye but
conference,
a
they
home game.
automatically get in. But if
Right.
they're in the top 12, if they're down six, the 6 to 12 rank, they could find their way in there as well. So it's not like a loss would doom them in any stretch of the imagination,
Yeah.
or even two losses could doom them from getting in there. So I think that's going to create a lot more buzz in college football in general. And I think, and also for UCF, because they feel like, okay, we're not out of it if we lose a game. If you lose a game early on in the first 6 games, you're not out of it. You know what I mean?
Especially if
So,
it's
which,
that Florida game where, you're probably
yeah,
expected to lose on the road in one of the toughest road environments in the country. If you win everything else, lose that, and then split the Utah and Arizona, like that's a great season in my books. That
yeah,
could probably
yeah.
qualify you
And I
for a
think
six
that
or
would
12 seed.
very, very much so. So so I said, again, I think that's what I mean by the schedule really kind of working out for them, because I think
Mhm.
it gives them and I think the buys help them out as well too. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
they
they're
get a
placed
chance to
above.
get an early buy. Yeah, and then they get, after they go through that stretch, where they play I think it's 6 games in a row, then they'll get a buy, which will help them out. And then they're on the road at West Virginia, and then they host Utah. So I think it works out really well for them, and it gives them an opportunity to see where they're at that point, and they can move forward.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting year. Like you said, the schedule is just formatted great. A lot of interesting home
Mhm.
games. That is an amazing home schedule. And then obviously a game right next door at Gainesville. I want to be at that one, and I'm planning on being at the Colorado game, maybe even the Utah, because those are all really good games. As far as the recruiting outlook of 2025, obviously it's ridiculously early to speculate, but there
Mhm.
are some commitments here and there. UCF is currently ranked 19th on 3 and 24th on 24/7 Sports. Is there any key recruits to watch? Maybe in a year that they're hoping to step even further up their recruiting ranks? Are there players to watch that UCF is surprisingly in the mix for?
So far early, it's been so early, like, and
Yeah,
and I think that they've thrown a lot of offers out there. There hasn't been, I would say, one or two that I think at this moment that I'm like 100%, yeah, that they're in the very mix for. I think right now what's gone on for Gus is that they're hitting this hard. I mean, you
yeah,
saw this a couple of weeks ago. They took a helicopter from the UCF campus and they went around to like 5 or 6 high schools in Central Florida, and they've been really hitting hard. They want to try to see if they can start keeping this up. That's unusual for Gus. Gus usually doesn't get involved
yeah.
until later on, but they're trying to get as many of these players as they possibly can, and understand that this is, listen, they're there. They want to be a factor in this. So it'll be interesting over the next 6 months to see what maybe they land when it comes to some commitments early on, whether players want to hold off and commit later on. So but right now, they're Gus is trying to get the best that he can possibly get.
It's off to a good start,
Yeah,
certainly.
very much so. And it's crazy. They're already talking. I think they've already offered a couple 2026, and I think they
Really,
may have even offered a 2027 at this point. So it's not
2027 is
like
crazy this far out. That's hitting the
yes,
recruiting trail hard.
yes, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, again, it's that's what happens. That's the future.
That's
You
what you
got
have
to
to
make
do,
sure that
especially
yeah, you
today.
got to make sure you stay in those homes. So, and they've done a good job of getting guys too that are really heavy recruiters. Tim Harris Jr., who they just hired as their offensive coordinator, he's big in South Florida, in the Miami area. He's a big
That's
recruiter in
good. Yeah.
that. Well, as Addison Williams, who he was on the staff, he's been a big recruiter. Ted Roof recruits linebackers really well. So they brought in guys and Tayshawn Reed, they brought in guys who they know can recruit really well. So I think that's going to be a focus that continues to be a focus for them.
Yeah. Really, just one more thing I gotta ask you before we wrap it up here. The guys that I host this show with, one of them is a Gator fan, and the other's a Hurricane. Me personally, I'm a Seminole fan, so we've really kind of all just come together to do this. But one of our most heated argument topics is whether Billy Napier is the right guy for this Gator job. You guys play at Florida this year. What is your opinion on Billy Napier and just the state of that Florida Gator program right now? And you
Well,
could
I
be
think
honest, because I'm probably going to use it against him in an argument.
well, I mean, listen, I think Billy, I've never been a big believer of firing someone after only a couple of years, unless they're
Yeah,
just really horrendous. I mean, I think Billy needs time, and I think this is probably his last year he's going to get of time, and it's going to be it's unfortunate because I think they got a really difficult schedule again. I mean,
yeah,
this
they
is
do. It's a bad
yeah,
one.
it's a bad one. So, I mean, I feel like Billy thought that they could come in and bring in an army of assistants and and analysts and stuff like that, and it was just going to kind of change everything. and it hasn't worked for them in some ways. I mean, they've struggled recruiting. They've done things on the field that just are mind boggling. I know he's brought in some new coaches to try to help with that. Special teams was a disaster the last couple of years. He brought a new special teams guy in. They got to figure out a way to eliminate the mistakes on the field. And if they could do that, win some games, I mean, listen, they're at this point, they're not contending against Georgia. I mean, Georgia's
No,
just at a different
not at
level.
all.
But if they could still be the number 2 or number 3 team in the East, well, what would be the East from now on? It's all going to
Right.
merge in.
Now it's just all free for
Yeah,
all.
it's all free fall. That would have been a big help for them. I just don't know if he's going to get the time. I mean, if they go 5-7 again, I find it very hard to imagine that Scott Strickland's going to keep, the AD is going to keep Billy Napier. But I always tell fans this is, who would you rather have in his place? I mean, we're unfortunately in this position where there isn't a lot of big name coaches that you would, it's not like you're going to lure Nick Saban to come, take
And
the
that's what it is.
Florida
Most
job.
coaching changes these days are just luring a coach from another program instead of
Yes.
finding one with. I mean, Michigan obviously hired one from within, but that's not the normal approach anymore. Now
Yeah.
it's to buy someone from another school.
Yeah, and that's tough to do because again, you've got to find somebody that can come in and and every time they do a coaching change, and I've talked about this, just not just anywhere at UCF, but other places. Just anytime you have a coaching change, that's about 3 years of lost time.
Yeah.
Because coaches come in, you have to bring in a whole new staff. That costs a lot of money, and then you have to recruit, and you have to rebuild these recruiting relationships.
Even Alabama just lost so many recruits from changing coaches. So it happens to everybody. You will never keep most of your recruits when you change coaches.
And so that's going to take time, and then you have to go the transfer portal route for a while until you get. So I mean, it's not like if they make a change, all of a sudden you're going to win the national championship the next year.
Right.
So I always warn fans, I'm like, you got to make sure. But if you're not seeing progress, if Florida doesn't show progress from year to year, then I just don't know how much longer you can keep Billy around. As much as Billy is an okay guy. I mean, I just don't think you can just kind of be average in the SEC.
Agreed.
Florida fans want to win.
Especially when you're a historic program. It's one thing when you're Vandy or Vanderbilt to do stuff like this, but you're Florida's won titles and your fans claim that you guys are some true blue blood program. I mean, that they're not going to stand around for what Billy gives them right now.
Yeah. So I mean, so that's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if they can do that. So if they can survive and maybe get to a bowl game and get to 7 wins, maybe Scott Strickland gives them another year, and you hope that the recruits start paying off and things start working. But it's going to remain to be seen. It used to be he was just recruiting against Florida, or he was recruiting against Florida State and Miami in the state. Now he's recruiting against UCF, and you're seeing
it adds more competition.
It adds
and
more
all these
to it,
SEC
and then
schools come down to Florida too.
Yeah, so he's got to really kind of crank it up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I'm not a huge Cristobal fan, but the one thing I will give the guy, they can both recruit, right? Billy Napier and Cristobal can both recruit. They're tremendous recruiters. Cristobal, at least, it was only 1 win, but he did get 1 more win in his second year than he did in his first. So, progress somewhere. And obviously Mike Norvell, my guy, he has improved every year on his. So Billy, the one thing you haven't seen is that year-over-year improvement. If anything, he regressed because obviously go from 6-7 to 5-7 on the year. Now you're going into an even tougher schedule, and even their non-conference, they do play UCF at home. They get Miami at home too. They get both at home. Those aren't 2 easy games anymore. If this was Miami last year, I'd say they'll probably win. Now you've got Cam Ward, you've got a top 3 recruiting class, you've got transfers. In UCF, you've got all these transfers and an upcoming program. These are not easy winnable games anymore. So it's going to be a really big year for Billy Napier. And you're right, I agree. This is do or die for him.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think also too, it's do or die for, Florida has to do a better job of its NIL. They just changed their NIL collective, the guy in charge of that. They need to do a better job because they're just not. They've had snafus in the beginning, obviously, with
asking fans to chip in the money to pay their NIL,
and that's hard. So yeah, if they get better NIL support, I think that you'll see. I think they'll have some better turnout as well.
Yeah, I agree. If there's any last things you want to add, feel free. If not, I mean, we can wrap up here. Honestly, thank you so much for coming on as always. Is there any last things you want to add?
I mean, just like I said, looking forward to spring ball kicking off in about a month, and we get a real chance to kind of maybe see some of these young recruits as we just talked about, and those guys stepping in and what kind of roles they can fill, and see just how talented this team could possibly be.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really excited for spring ball across the whole state, the whole country. The offseason still with recruiting and everything. It's always super fun to keep up with, but I'm just super excited for this next season to kick off. I mean, it cannot come soon enough with all the storylines and the realignment and the 12-team playoff. Not only that, but for those who are interested, the college football EA video game coming back this summer. I mean, there's a lot to look forward to at this next college football season. Thank you so much, Matt, for coming on. Guys, remember to like, subscribe, and comment down below what you want to see more of. We're trying to cater to everything you want. Thank you so much for the continued support, and until next time.